Have you ever tried to save a dying marriage, only to have your efforts thrown in the rubbish bin? Literally. I stood in the doorway of my own home, holding a bouquet for my wife, Melissa. I thought maybe, just maybe, she would smile. Instead, she laughed. She called them cheap. And right in front of me, she dropped them into the bin like yesterday's leftovers. She thought I was weak. She thought I would just take it. But she didn't know her own sister Claire was watching everything. That moment changed everything. Claire didn't just stand there. She fished those flowers out of the bin, looked me in the eye, and told me they were beautiful. That was the first crack in Melissa's armor. But the real war didn't start in the kitchen. It started at a French restaurant a week later, a night that was supposed to fix us, but ended up destroying us. If you want to see how a quiet man finally finds his spine and takes down a toxic partner, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, the ending of this story is more satisfying than you can imagine. Drop a like if you believe loyalty matters. At the restaurant, Melissa walked out on me mid-dinner. She said she felt sick. She left me sitting there alone with the bill. I felt pathetic. But 5 minutes later, a stranger sitting at the next table walked over to me. He looked nervous. He said, "Excuse me, but I think you need to know the truth about the woman who just left." What he told me shattered my marriage in seconds, but it also gave me the weapon I needed to win. Fast forward to the divorce court. Melissa walked in, demanding half of my assets. She thought she had won. She sat down, looked up at the bench, and her face went ghost white. Because the judge sitting there, he wasn't a stranger. He was the man from the restaurant, the man who saw everything. This is the story of how my wife played a game she couldn't win, and how I found a new life with the one person she underestimated the most.
She looked at the bouquet like it were an insult. "Wildflowers," Melissa said, one brow arching so high it practically disappeared into her hairline. "Really, Daniel?" I stood in the doorway of our terraced house in Bristol, the late afternoon sun warming my shoulders, clutching a modest bunch of yellow and white blooms I'd picked up from the local greengrocer. Dust from the roadside still clung to the stems. I didn't say anything at first. I thought maybe she was joking. Perhaps she'd crack a smile, even a tired one. But then she laughed. Not kindly, not like the Melissa I used to know. This was the laugh of someone amused by a child's failed attempt at drawing a horse. "They look like you picked them out of a ditch," she said, snatching them from my hands without ceremony. "Cheap, try hard. Do you really think this fixes anything?" Before I could answer, she was already at the bin. The pedal clanged the lid open, and she dropped the bouquet inside like yesterday's leftovers. I blinked. I thought you liked daisies," I finally said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. She turned, arms crossed now, eyes scanning me like I was a suspicious package left unattended on the tube. "That was 10 years ago, Daniel, before you turned into a middle-aged man who thinks petrol station flowers count as effort." Claire walked in just then, Melissa's younger sister, fresh from the guest room, a mug of tea in hand and bare feet padding softly against the tile. She stopped in her tracks, eyes flicking between us, then to the open bin. "What happened here?" she asked, clearly amused. "Daniel brought me flowers," Melissa said, her tone biting. "Apparently this is what passes for romance now." Claire tilted her head, walked over to the bin, and fished the bouquet out like it was a treasure. She brought it to her nose and inhaled, then turned to me with a smile that felt too tender for the moment. "They're beautiful," she said, still holding my eyes. "Smells like summer." Melissa stepped forward fast. "Give me a break, Claire." "What?" Claire blinked, still smiling. "I was just being nice." "You're always just being nice with your long looks and flirty little sighs. Don't think I don't notice." Claire's smile faltered. "Mel, you're seeing shadows where there aren't any." "Oh, really?" Melissa snapped. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been circling him since the day you got here." My mouth opened, but Claire beat me to it. "And maybe if you appreciated what you had, you wouldn't be so scared of losing it." Melissa's hand slapped the countertop. "Don't you dare lecture me in my own home." Claire's voice stayed low, but sharp. "Then maybe act like it is a home, not a war zone." "Get out of my kitchen," Melissa said through gritted teeth. Claire looked at me, eyes searching. "Do you want me to go?" Melissa snorted. "Oh, he's not going to answer that. He doesn't have the spine." That one landed. I felt something twist deep in my gut. "I wanted to do something nice," I said, trying to steady my voice. "That's all." "You wanted to feel like a husband again," Melissa fired back. "Too bad I stopped playing house years ago." Silence fell. The worst kind. Thick, ugly, choking. Claire set the bouquet gently on the table. She didn't say another word, just turned and walked out of the room, barefoot and burning with quiet fury. Melissa stayed rooted, eyes still locked on mine like she was waiting to see if I'd crack. I didn't. I just looked down at the bouquet, now wilted and torn, lying among the crumbs and tea rings. Dinner that night was quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the kind where every clink of silverware feels like an alarm. But amidst the silence, I noticed something shift between Claire and I, a subtle alliance forming in the wreckage of my marriage.
Dinner that night was an exercise in tension. Melissa sat at the head of the table, phone in hand, thumbs scrolling like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Her plate barely touched. She hadn't said more than 5 words since the fight earlier. I didn't expect an apology, but I wasn't even sure she remembered it happened. Claire, meanwhile, hummed softly to herself as she placed the last serving dish down. She wore one of Melissa's old jumpers, loose at the sleeves, and her hair was tied up with a pencil. A flickering candle between us made the shadows dance on her face. Her voice, quiet, tuneful, almost too serene for this house, cut through the thick silence like warm tea on a sore throat. She looked up at me and smiled faintly. "You always set the table the same way." I glanced at the silverware. Forks on the left, knives on the right, napkins folded, one crease sharp, one soft. The kind of thing you don't think about until someone points it out. "Habit," I said, almost apologetically. "I like it," she said, taking her seat beside me. Melissa snorted. Claire didn't react. I watched Melissa's wine glass tilt again and again toward her lips, half the glass gone, no eye contact. She wore her silk robe like armor, daring anyone to challenge her authority. Her hair was up, messy but intentional, a queen fallen from grace but still clinging to the throne. I used to know this woman, the way she'd lean into me when we watched old films, a little skip in her step after she got a compliment. Now she moved like someone doing time, stuck, resentful, and determined to take me with her. The only thing that had felt remotely like joy this past week had been Claire. She didn't walk, she bounced. She sang badly, danced barefoot, and left mugs half-finished all over the house. But she also asked questions about work, about the garden, about the dreams I used to have before life started feeling like a to-do list. Melissa caught me looking at Claire a second too long. She didn't say a word, just locked her phone, slid her chair back with a screech and left the room. Claire didn't even flinch, just reached across the table, picked up the salt, and handed it to me. "Thanks," I muttered, suddenly aware of how much my hands were shaking. "Anytime," she whispered. We ate in silence for a while. The candle burned down to a stub. Melissa never came back. I washed the dishes while Claire dried them. We didn't touch, didn't even brush shoulders, but when I handed her the final plate, her fingers lingered against mine just for a second, but it was enough. My birthday used to mean something. Melissa would bake a cake, always lemon,
always from scratch. And we'd sit under the backyard pergola with paper lanterns strung up as we lived in a storybook. There were toasts, dumb hats, and corny playlists. The kind of tradition that felt small until it was gone. This year there was no cake, no music, just 10 people I barely knew sipping wine from the cheap glasses we got as a wedding gift and pretending not to notice the tension bleeding through the walls. Melissa sat slouched in the corner armchair. Her robe was swapped for a velvet dress that looked expensive, but hung off her like it didn't want to be there either. A glass of red wine dangled from her hand. She hadn't smiled once. I was mid-conversation with my coworker Greg, something about zoning bylaws and why nobody ever follows them, when I heard her voice, loud, slurred. "I'm not in the mood. Try my sister instead." Every sound in the room stopped. Glasses paused mid-air. Greg blinked at me, half a laugh frozen on his face, and then Claire, without missing a beat, leaned forward, curled her lips into the most effortless smirk I'd ever seen, and said, "We already tried." The silence cracked open. Someone choked on their drink. Someone else laughed nervously, awkwardly, trying to break the tension. But I didn't move, didn't smile, didn't deny it. I just took another sip of my bourbon and let the silence live. Melissa's face went crimson. For a second, I thought she might cry, but she stood instead, nearly knocking her glass over. The fallout from Claire's comment was about to change everything. Melissa's face went crimson. For a second, I thought she might cry, but she stood instead, nearly knocking her glass over as she did. "Are you all disgusting?" she barked. "Is this some kind of joke to you?" Nobody answered. "Get out," she snapped, voice shaking. "Everyone get out of my house now." There was a scramble of movement. Apologies mumbled, coats snatched, chairs scraping back. Claire didn't move, didn't even blink as guests brushed past her. She just sipped her drink and crossed one leg over the other, perfectly calm in the storm she'd lit. Melissa turned to me, eyes wild. "You think this is funny?" I set my glass down gently on the coffee table. "No," I said quietly. "I think it's revealing." Her mouth fell open, but no sound came. She stormed off, heels clicking violently down the hallway. A door slammed seconds later. Claire finally turned to me. "Too far?" she asked, voice light but laced with something else, something sharp. I didn't answer right away, just studied her. She didn't look guilty. If anything, she looked curious. "I didn't expect you to say that," I finally said. Claire shrugged. Neither did I. Her eyes met mine, calm, unapologetic. "But she's been throwing grenades at you for years. Figured maybe it was time someone tossed one back." I should have been angry. Should have scolded her, told her she crossed a line. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about the way she said it. We already tried. She said it like a dare, like she wanted to see if Melissa would believe it, like maybe part of her wished it was true. That night, after the last car pulled away and the lights dimmed, I sat alone in the living room. The candle from dinner still flickered faintly. I could hear Claire in the guest room humming something tuneless. Melissa didn't come out again, and I didn't check on her. I just sat there, bourbon warming my hand, eyes fixed on the doorway where Claire had stood. And the worst part? I couldn't tell if what I felt was guilt or relief. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. No footsteps, no clinking dishes, just the soft hum of the refrigerator, and a heaviness that hung in the air like leftover smoke. I found Claire in the kitchen, barefoot, her hair tied up with a pencil again, flipping through a battered cookbook with a chipped mug of coffee in her hand. She looked up when I entered, not startled, not guilty, just waiting. I leaned against the counter and folded my arms. "We need to talk." She shut the book gently and turned toward me, her expression unreadable. "About last night?" I nodded. She nodded back, exhaling through her nose like she'd been holding that breath for hours. I didn't mean to humiliate her. Well, maybe I did, but I didn't expect the fallout to land on you. "Did you?" I asked, searching her face. "Mean what you said?" There was a pause, not long, but enough to matter. She didn't flinch. "No," she said quietly, "but maybe I wanted to." That settled between us like dust. I shook my head, trying to clear the heat creeping up the back of my neck. "You lit a fire in the middle of a house already soaked in gasoline." Claire's arms folded now, too. Her voice dropped an octave. "And Melissa's the one who's been striking matches for months." "Is she still my wife?" Claire raised her eyebrows. "Is she?" That stung, more than I wanted to admit. My jaw clenched and I turned away, staring out the small kitchen window at the wilting backyard garden. "Look, I don't know what you think is going on here," I said flat. "I think you're miserable. I think she treats you like a ghost. And I think you're waiting for someone, anyone, to permit you to feel something again." I spun around. "You don't get to judge my marriage." "I'm not judging it. I'm watching it fall apart in slow motion." Something snapped inside me. "You want honesty? Fine," I said. "You embarrassed her, you embarrassed me, and for what? A punchline?" Claire didn't back down. "No, for a moment of truth. Something real, which is more than she's offered you in years." I stepped closer, not touching, but near enough that her scent hit me. Vanilla and coffee and defiance. "You're stirring up things that don't belong to you." Her eyes didn't leave mine. "Maybe they should belong to you. Maybe you've let her take everything and forgot how to take anything back." There it was. The heat, the electricity that had been simmering since she arrived. But underneath it all, confusion, conflict, and something too fragile to name yet. "I should ask you to leave," I said. Claire nodded slowly. "You should." But neither of us moved. Finally, I turned away, grabbed my jacket from the back of the kitchen chair, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she asked. "I don't know," I muttered. The door clicked shut behind me. The air outside was crisp, but my skin still burned from what just passed us. I didn't go far, just drove aimlessly, past schools, petrol stations, the same sleepy intersections I passed every week. But everything felt different now, like the world had tilted slightly and I was the only one who noticed. When I finally pulled into the driveway again, the sun was already slipping behind the houses. The windows glowed softly from inside. Melissa's car hadn't moved, and Claire's shadow crossed the hallway. Things weren't just falling apart anymore. They were shifting, and I had no idea which way the pieces would land.
By the second day of silence, I'd stopped trying to break it. Melissa hadn't said a full sentence to me since the party. She moved through the house like a warden, wordless, watching, irritated by everything that wasn't silence. She'd taken to sleeping in the guest room, which made things easier and louder in all the ways that mattered. Claire, on the other hand, was humming again. She padded through the kitchen in mismatched socks and oversized jumpers, half smiling whenever she crossed paths with me, but careful, measured. She knew the edges were sharper now. That afternoon, I stood outside the bedroom door, staring at the knot in the wood grain for a long moment before I knocked once. Melissa didn't answer, but I heard her set her wine glass down. "I made a dinner reservation for us tonight. That French place you liked, 7 o'clock. Silence. I waited. "I'm not in the mood." Her voice was flat. No pause to consider. Just a door slamming without hinges. I almost turned away, but then I heard Claire's voice drift from the hallway behind me. Light, curious, just loud enough. "Oh, then maybe I'll go instead." I turned around in time to see her leaning against the banister, arms folded, one eyebrow raised like she was half joking, but only half. The bedroom door swung open. Melissa appeared, arms crossed, jaw tight. "What did you say?" Claire blinked innocently. "I said maybe I'll go. Daniel shouldn't waste a reservation, right?" Melissa stepped out into the hall like she was claiming territory. "You think this is funny?" "I think it's polite," Claire replied, casually brushing a lock of hair from her face. "I'm happy to keep him company, unless, of course, you'd rather take the seat." Melissa stared at her, then at me, back at Claire. "I'll go," she snapped. "Obviously." Claire smiled like a cat watching a bird walk straight into a trap. "Wonderful. You'll want to change."
Melissa glared at both of us before turning on her heel and slamming the door shut behind her. Claire didn't look at me right away. When she did, her voice was calm. Do you really think she was ever going to say yes without a little nudge? I wasn't trying to provoke her. No, she said. You were trying to salvage something, but sometimes you have to make people choose, Daniel, otherwise they just keep avoiding it. I didn't respond, just looked down at the floor. I'll be here when you get back, she added, then she disappeared down the stairs. At 6:45, Melissa emerged from the bedroom dressed like someone auditioning for a version of herself she hadn't played in years. Sleek black dress, subtle red lipstick, heels that clicked like punctuation with every step. She didn't say a word, just grabbed her clutch and walked to the car. She didn't ask if I was driving, didn't thank me for the invitation, but she was going. And that meant the first move had been made. The question now was which one of us would play next. The restaurant was just as I remembered it, dim lighting that made every table feel like its own little world. Soft jazz humming from hidden speakers, waiters who moved like they were gliding. The kind of place where people whispered more than they spoke, where the food was supposed to impress. But it was the silence that did the most talking. Melissa sat across from me in a dress that should have made heads turn. And maybe it did on any other woman, but on her, it looked like armor. Sharp lines, no softness, no ease. Her posture was stiff, spine straight, arms crossed across the table like she was expecting an interrogation. I tried, I really did. I think they changed the menu, I said, opening mine. They didn't used to have duck confit. She didn't look up. I'm not hungry. They have wine pairings. She gave a humorless smile. I brought my own tolerance. We ordered anyway. She picked the first dish she saw. I asked for the chef's special because I didn't care. The waiter left, and we were alone again, sitting beneath the warm glow of the overhead pendant light. It flickered a little. Or maybe I just imagined that. I reached for the bread basket. Do you want? I said I'm not hungry. Her tone was sharp enough to slice through the linen napkins. I'm not hungry. You rolled down your cell phone. I leaned back in my chair. Then why did you come? She stared at me, eyes narrowed, to remind your little audience at home that I'm still your wife. My jaw tightened. No one's watching, Melissa. She laughed, a dry, low sound. Aren't they? Your little admirer with her piano playlists and her stolen glances. She's been hovering like a house guest who thinks she's auditioning for my role. She's your sister. She's a shadow with lipstick. And you've been eating it up. I wanted to argue, to say something righteous, defensive. But the truth was, I had let it happen. Not because I wanted to replace Melissa, but because I didn't know how to talk to her version of her that came home from nowhere and stayed angry at everything. I invited you here because I wanted to try, I said, calm. She rolled her eyes. You wanted to impress Claire. No, I said, steady now. I wanted to remember what it felt like to sit across from someone who used to look at me like I was worth dressing up for. That landed. I saw it in her face just for a second. Her expression wavered, but then she straightened her shoulders, picked up her glass and said, I don't feel well. She stood up. Melissa, I'm going to the restroom. And she walked off. Not in a rush, not in a stumble, just gone. 10 minutes passed, then 15, then 20. The waiter returned, saw her empty seat and paused. Would you like us to hold the entree, sir? I checked my phone. No texts. I forced a smile. Yes, just a few more minutes. At 30 minutes, I called her. 3 rings, then a soft click. Her voice came through, calm, flat. I went home. I blinked. You left? I told you I didn't feel well. You didn't say goodbye. There was a pause on the line. Then, good night, Daniel. And the call ended. I sat there staring at my phone in the middle of a table set for 2. The silverware gleamed under the candlelight. Her napkin was still folded. She didn't come back, and I didn't leave right away, because sitting alone in that booth, I realized something that cut deeper than her silence ever could. She hadn't walked out to punish me. She walked out because she felt nothing at all.
That's when I noticed him. A man, maybe mid-40s, sitting 2 tables down. He'd arrived just after Melissa left for the restroom. Button-down shirt, no tie, blazer still on, like he wasn't planning to stay long. He wasn't eating, just sipping whiskey and checking his watch every few minutes. Something about the timing scratched at my brain. He'd brushed past Melissa on her way out. I kept watching him, not openly, but carefully. I've worked enough zoning cases to know how to read posture, how to see the gaps between words. This man wasn't waiting for dinner. He was waiting for someone. I stood, walked over slowly, calmly. "Excuse me," I said. He looked up, surprised. "Yeah?" I took out my phone and pulled up a photo of Melissa, one from a trip to Asheville back when we smiled like it meant something. "Did you see this woman earlier?" His eyes flicked to the screen, then back to me. A flash of guilt crossed his face before he tried to bury it. "I might have," he said carefully. "Why?" "She left in the middle of dinner, said she wasn't feeling well." He hesitated, then gave a slow, uncomfortable nod. "She sat with me briefly." I stared at him. "You didn't know she was married," I said. His jaw flexed. "No, I didn't." Silence settled between us. He reached for his glass but didn't drink. "Look, I don't want trouble. She told me she was single. We met at a bookstore maybe 2 months ago. It's been casual." Of course it had. "How long?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. He hesitated again. 3, maybe 4 times? I swear I didn't know. I nodded slowly. "You don't need to worry," I said. "I'm not here to start anything." He looked relieved. "Thanks, and sorry." I held out my hand. He blinked, then took it. "We'll keep this between us," I said. And I meant it. Not because I wanted to protect him, but because I wanted Melissa to keep thinking she was in control. I turned and walked back to my table, sat down again, and let the candle burn lower. The jazz kept playing softly and slowly. The waiter returned, and I waved him off. I wasn't hungry anymore. I just sat there watching the wine sweat in its glass. The untouched bread is turning stale by the second. The warmth in the room had turned cold, not from the air, from the knowing. She didn't lie to protect me. She lied because she thought I'd never find out. I left a tip, paid the full bill, walked outside into the night air that smelled like wet concrete and overcooked ambition. I didn't rush home. I just sat in the car for a while, headlights off, listening to nothing. Somewhere between the appetizer and dessert, my marriage had finally died. And this time, there was no scene, no door slammed, just the quiet click of realization Melissa was already gone. She had just forgotten to take her nameplate off the mailbox. The next morning, I didn't wake up to the usual sounds. No glass clinking, no microwave beeping, no footsteps in the hallway. Just silence and the low mechanical breath of the ceiling fan above our bed. I made my own coffee, sat at the kitchen table, staring at the steam rising from the mug like it had something to say. At 8:17, there was a knock at my office door. Claire walked in without waiting for an answer. She wore a pale sweater and jeans, hair tied loosely at the nape. No performance, just real. She handed me a paper cup, the good kind, real beans, strong aroma, still warm. "You didn't come home until late," she said softly. I nodded, had a lot to think about. She sat in the chair across from me, no teasing smile this time, just a kind of weary truth in her posture, like she'd stopped pretending to be unaffected. "She's been cheating on you for months, while you worked overtime, while you cooked dinner, while you fixed the gutter, and kept her wine glass full." She said it like she'd rehearsed it, like she'd decided last night that if I didn't say it first, she would. I didn't react. I just looked at her, tired, hollow, still holding the coffee she brought like some kind of peace offering. "I know," I said finally. Her shoulders dropped a little. She blinked. "You do?" I nodded once. "There was a man at the restaurant. She left to go sit with him. He admitted it." "I didn't make a scene." Claire exhaled, slowly and almost sadly, You always take the quiet road. Doesn't mean it hurts less. A long silence followed. Then I said something I hadn't prepared for. I owe you an apology. Claire looked at me sharply. For what? For not believing you. For assuming you were trying to make trouble when you warned me. For thinking you were stirring things that didn't belong to you. Claire stared at her hands. I wasn't trying to replace her. I know. I didn't come here to start something with you, Daniel. I came because I needed distance from my life, and then I saw yours, and I guess I got angry for you. I let that sit. Then I nodded. Thank you for telling me the truth even when I didn't want to hear it. Her eyes met mine, soft and clear. Do you still not want to? I thought about that. No, I said. Now I need it. Claire didn't smile, but something loosened in her face, a kind of quiet relief. She stood slowly, picking up her empty cup. You know you don't have to be the polite one anymore. What do you mean? I mean, she broke it, whatever this was. You don't have to keep pretending it's still yours to fix. I stared down at my coffee, then back to her. I'm not pretending anymore. She walked to the door, then turned back, her voice low. If you need me, I'll be here, but I'll let you lead this time. Then she left, closing the door with a softness that said more than any slam ever could. I sat there alone for another hour. Didn't open my laptop, didn't return calls, just sat with the weight of the truth. Ugly, cold, and strangely freeing. Melissa had crossed the line, and for once, I wasn't chasing after her. I had nothing to prove and nothing left to save. Stats on infidelity in the UK. In the UK, infidelity statistics reveal that 20% of married British adults admit to having an affair. Infidelity is cited as a factor in 27% of divorce petitions. Men are slightly more likely to admit to cheating, 25%, compared to women, 15%. The confrontation with Melissa was inevitable, but the outcome was something neither of us expected. And in the end, it wasn't about who won or lost, but about finding a way to move forward.